Thank you for that spectacular piece of music and visuals. And thank you to the children for that charming retelling of the Christmas story in a way that is appropriate for our COVID times. But before the Christmas story, before Jesus was born, there's what we call the Annunciation, when Mary heard an angel's voice asking her if she would be willing to be a part of God's amazing plan. There is an amazing painting of the Annunciation by Henry Ossawa Tanner, which hangs in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. It's been there since 1899. What is amazing is that Tanner was an African American and his mother an escaped slave. Fortunately, he had a benefactor and he was able to study at the Pennsylvania Academy of Art. In time, he made his way to the art community in Paris, where his race was not an issue. There are many classic paintings, of course, of the Annunciation, from luminaries like Da Vinci and Botticelli, and the list goes on. Mary is in the flowing robes of an Italian noblewoman, and an angel with great big wings kneels in front of her. But Tanner's painting is a modern painting. There's no halo around Mary's head, and there's nothing grand about her surroundings. Stained walls with old blankets stretched across the window. Mary has a Middle Eastern skin tone and frizzy dark hair. She's young and small and insignificant. She's wearing a dirty, rumpled brown skirt. She's staring in wonder at the pillar of light, and she hears a voice. "Hello, Mary. God has highly favored you." He was going to ask her if she would be willing to carry God's Son in her womb, and whatever mystery that might entail. Frederick Buechner, in his book Peculiar Treasures, has Gabriel with his fingers crossed behind his back, and these are Buechner's words about what the angel Gabriel might have been thinking. She struck him as hardly old enough to have a child at all, let alone this child. "You mustn't be afraid, Mary," said Gabriel. As he said it, he only hoped she wouldn't notice that beneath his great golden wings, he himself was trembling with fear, to think that the whole future of salvation hung on the answer of this little girl. "Mary," he said, "you are highly favored." What does it mean to be highly favored? Joel Osteen, in his best-selling book, Your Best Life is Now, has 2 chapters on what it means to be highly favored. He says, if you're highly favored by God, you don't have to pay tickets when stopped for speeding. He says, if you're highly favored by God, you get seated ahead of others in crowded restaurants. He says, if you're highly favored by God, you find prime parking spots in crowded lots. If you're highly favored by God, you get the job that others are better qualified to have. If you're highly favored by God, you get moved up to first-class accommodations on an airplane. If you're highly favored by God, people are just standing in line, wanting to help you in every way they possibly can. That is utter nonsense. That is not how life is. That is not how life would be for Mary. Life would not be cute and easy. We sing, "Mary, did you know?" She had no idea what favor with God meant for her. The stress of pregnancy out of marriage in an ancient world, giving birth far from home in a stranger's house, Herod's breathing fire and putting all their lives at risk, fleeing for their lives as poor, desperate refugees in Egypt, seeing her son scorned and despised by the political and religious elite, the unimaginable horror of seeing her son nailed to a cross. Who here would like to be favored by God? Before you run off in abject terror and dread, let me tell you about those in whom I see God's grace and peace and love, and who have found favor with God in the truest and best sense of it. I wonder if parents still buy children's books by Shel Silverstein. They're whimsical, humorous, incredibly creative. And I think among the best is The Giving Tree. It is a story about a tree that loved a little boy. In his younger years, they played hide and seek. In those carefree childhood days, the boy ate the tree's fruits, swung from her branches, slept in her shade, and the tree was happy. As the boy grew older, however, he had less time for the tree. He did return once as a young man, but he was not interested in swinging from the tree's branches now. He was only interested in one thing: money. The tree had a great idea. "Take my apples and sell them," she said. The young man did, and the tree was happy. A long time passed before the young man came by again. When he did, he was not interested in play. He wanted to build himself a house. "Here, take my branches," cried the tree, "and build your house." He did, and the tree was happy. More years passed. Now the young man was growing older. He was tired of his surroundings. He wanted to see the world. When he expressed his weary yearnings to the tree, she exclaimed, "Cut me down, take my large trunk, and make yourself a boat. Then you can sail away." And that's what he did. The tree was happy. Many more years passed, and an old man returns, too old, too tired to swing from branches, to pursue great riches, to build houses or boats. Says the tree to the old man, "I have a pretty good stump left, my friend. Why don't you just sit down here and rest?" He did, and the tree was happy. I know someone who gives and gives and gives, don't you? The giving tree is so much like God and his love for us. He comes into our world in his Son, Jesus Christ, and he gives us everything he has until he lets us take his very life away. This year is a tough year for us, with COVID and many other uncertainties. And the good news is this: God so loved the world that he gave to us his only Son. And how blessed and favored are those who believe with heart and soul and mind and with their whole strength that there is a God who loves them no matter what. And more fully they open their hearts to God's love. More it overflows in love to others, the poor, the needy, the ugly, the despairing. And loving them, the other, becomes the high and noble purpose of their lives. It's not about what is happening to you, but what is happening in you. You are in a relationship with the Almighty, and you know deep down how wonderfully you are blessed. You are highly favored.